Hello, 360 Talk Radio for Women. This is Dawn Abbott with another episode of The Visionary Woman, Empowering Your Success Through EOS. We're on the boardroom and we're on to episode 5 here. So if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, please go back and digest that information. They're all in a specific order, so it will help you to have that understanding. The best place to get this content is by downloading the 360 Talk Radio for Women app. And I'm glad you're here. So everything that I've been discussing on this show for the boardroom has been about EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and the fact that the Entrepreneurial Operating System is a framework of real-world tools and solutions and disciplines that strengthen 6 key components within your organization. And those 6 key components start with vision, understanding who you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there, and make sure that that's crystallized and that the entire organization understands that. Second discipline is people, defining the right people and right seats for your unique organization and making sure that you have those right people in the right seats from top to bottom in your entire organization. The third key component is data, and that's where we're at today. And so we're going to be diving into data further. The fourth, one of the things to understand about those 3 top components of any organization is when you strengthen those 3 areas, all of a sudden issues are going to boil to the top. You now have a very transparent organization, and you're going to be collecting information that shows you sort of where the trouble spots are, where the headaches, hassles, obstacles are. And so then the 4th key component ties in nicely because it's the issues component. And that is just making sure that in your organization, everybody has a place to bring up their issues and a system and process called IDS, identify, discuss, and solve problems, issues, once and one time only, right? So we solve it, we don't keep discussing it and coming back to it month after month, right? And then the 5th, that was 4. The 5th key component is the process component, and I'll do another episode on process, how to document and make sure that all of your processes are shared by all in the organization. And lastly, traction, which is just setting up a cadence and a habit for proper meetings and creating accountability within your organization, because without traction, vision is hallucination, right? Okay, so those are the 6 key components, and all of the tools and disciplines that we teach throughout EOS is in an effort to strengthen each of those 6 key areas, because what we know to be true is once these areas are strengthened to at least 80%, you're running more efficiently, you're more profitable, you're an accountable organization, you're cohesive, and you're meeting your goals. So diving into this data component. So the idea here is really about boiling your business down to good, solid, hard data, not running your business on intuition or gut. Now, I'm a huge proponent of adding some intuition and gut, because you do have that within your business. And so the idea, though, is you need to be making key decisions by having good, solid data and not just feelings and emotions, and sometimes egos that are often driving the way you make decisions and the choices that you make. And so the first tool that we use under this data component is the scorecard. And this has been called numerous things, KPIs, dashboards, etc. So sorry to throw another term at you, but scorecard is the tool that we use in the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so we start with the leadership team scorecard, which is really the company scorecard. And it's 5 to 15 high-level numbers to create this simple scorecard. And it's a tool designed to give you an absolute pulse on what's working and what's not working. So when we work together, we build out a really great leadership scorecard. And when you're done, you're going to have a tool that essentially is a spreadsheet that has who's accountable for each of the measurables. So each row is a measurable. There's going to be a column for who's responsible or who's accountable for driving that number. And then we're going to have the measurable itself. It's going to describe that measurable. And then you're going to have a goal. And sometimes it's hard to choose that goal when you haven't collected data before, right? And so that's where you use some gut, you make a hypothesis, an educated guess of where you think that goal should be. You dig into your financials, whatever you need to do to sort of come up with a goal for now. And then we're going to track that goal on a weekly basis, so that weekly you're staying accountable so that monthly, quarterly, and annual goals can be met. Right? If you're only looking at it once a month, it's very hard to make a difference in your monthly goal, right? When it's already passed you by. Or you set a quarterly goal for revenue, and you check at the end of the quarter, and by gosh, you haven't hit it. Well, that's not really acceptable if you're going to move forward and get the traction towards your vision, right? So we set up this weekly accountability so that if week 1 is off, we have, a whole bunch more weeks, 11, 10, right? More weeks to make an impact, to make sure that that goal is hit, okay, for the quarter, and then eventually the annual. So the other nice thing is you're always looking at 13 weeks of history at a glance when you start, filling in this scorecard, right? And you're going to see patterns and trends develop. You're always going to keep this pulse going, but you're going to be alerted when something's off. And we want these measurables within the scorecard to be from different areas. So they're not all just financial, but when we're talking about company, there may be 1 or 2 financial goals, maybe a couple sales goals, maybe some operational goals, some, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, maybe some numbers around ordering and keeping costs down, things like that. So maybe a marketing number too, how many leads are coming in the door. So you're really going to think of 1 to 2 numbers from all the areas in your company on a high level. And then the next step, once we get a great leadership team scorecard in place, the next step will be eventually getting to a point where all of the teams or all of the departments within your organization have a departmental scorecard. So if you're talking about marketing, on the leadership team or the company scorecard, you have how many leads, right? Maybe that's the only number you think you need. But the marketing department now is going to look at every marketing tactic, see how many leads are coming from each of those, how many, they're going to dive in and have their own 5 to 15 numbers so they can keep a pulse on how all of their numbers are going to translate into the goal of X number of leads coming in the door every week, right? And then we get to a point where literally everyone in the organization has at least one measurable on a scorecard somewhere. So if you have 40 employees, all 40 have at least one number, and they know that they're accountable for keeping track of that number and hitting the goal on that number, right? And that's how we keep everyone consistent and accountable and disciplined in hitting goals. It also creates this culture where people understand what's expected of them. And there's not any ambiguity about what is doing my job well. They're given these measurables that say, okay, if I make X number of calls, or if I keep costs down to this, or if I make sure every delivery is on time, or whatever their measurables are, that tells them I have the confidence that I know I'm doing my job well, which is one of the important things employees need to understand in order to have satisfaction with their job, is they want to know that they're doing well. And And they don't need to have a performance review weekly to know that. When they know that they have measurables to hit, and if they're hitting them, then they're on target with the company's goals and doing their part in reaching them. So I want to dig into helping you take a first cut or a first pass at your scorecard. So again, what we end up finding is there's two realities when we teach organizations and leadership teams the scorecard. The first reality is people get it, they love it, they understand it, and they're really excited to build out their scorecard. The second reality is that people say our scorecard isn't working. And what we have found after digging in a little further to the issue of my scorecard isn't working is that it's a symptom of an organization or a team not believing in 7 truths and 6 fundamentals. So I'm going to share those 7 truths and 6 fundamentals with you before we dive into how to create this, because it adds a lot of context to creating this and helping you see the importance of it. Okay, so the 7 truths that you must believe in order for your scorecard to work and it to be a valuable tool for you, you must believe, number 1, what gets measured gets done. And so the idea here is a story that I will share with you from Bethlehem Steel, when there was the least well-performing mill, when they were still creating steel, and there was X number of units being produced. Let's say there was 15 units of steel being produced by most mills, and this was around half, right? 7 units of steel. And so leaders went in and said, let's determine what's going on here. And so they watched the day shift make 4 units of steel. And they wrote that on the floor, 4, and circled it at the end of the shift. When the night crew came in, said, what's this number 4 on the floor? They said, that's how many units the day shift produced. Well, so the night shift says, let's go do more, right? So the leaders watch them produce 5 units. So they erase the 4 and write 5, circle it. Day shift comes in, sees 5. Little by little, the shifts are beating each other's number of units produced during a shift until this is the highest producing mill in the entire organization. So that's the context to believing that what gets measured gets done. People know you're measuring is what they know that they're shooting for, right? Number 2, you must believe that managing metrics saves time. Because I will be honest with you, it takes a little bit of time for you to set goals, to teach those goals, to go out and count what gets done, or look in the financials, or find out how many leads. All that takes a little work, takes a little effort, and then you have to report that goal, right? So it takes time. So you do have to believe that at the end of the day, doing this little bit of effort will actually save you time. And the reason that it saves you time is understanding where the problem lies. Rather than we're not hitting our revenue numbers, you can dig in and see, well, X number of calls that we set as a goal are not being made, or the conversions are not happening. What are we going to do at that level? Or the leads aren't coming in, or whatever it is, rather than saying, oh, we're not making the money we need to make, and digging in all over and solving problems that may not be the real problem, right? So that's going to save you a ton of time. The third truth is a scorecard gives you a pulse and the ability to predict. So you have to believe that once you have these numbers, you're going to be able to see these trends and start looking forward and understanding what maybe needs to happen, predict possible issues coming down the line, right? When we don't get the leads that we need, we're not going to get the conversion, which means the revenue is not going to happen, which means now we can predict an issue and solve it long before it becomes an issue, and make a plan for it, rather than putting out the fire when it's already burning. Okay. Number 4 is you must inspect what you expect. Everyone understands what is most important is what you're inspecting, right? So that same concept of people get what's important and why it's important, and they understand their role in hitting that. And employees respect what management inspects, right? So the 5th truth is you can have accountability in a culture that is high trust and healthy. I get some feedback when I'm working with leadership teams in that we don't want to be controlling. We don't want to micromanage our teams. And they think that giving them a goal in number of calls they have to make per day or number of units they must produce or any of those other things feels like micromanagement, and it doesn't feel like trust, right? Well, let me just share with you what you know to be true is that rock stars love accountability. People who are doing their job love it to be measured. They love to stand up when the goal is 10 calls and say, I made 20, right? They love to report that. Only the people who don't want to hit goals and want to lay back and hide behind, I don't know, it's not working, are the ones that don't like accountability. So it's kind of a good way to find those rock stars, right? And to be able to kind of reward them simply by allowing them to report and getting a high five on hitting goals, right? Or surpassing them. The 6th truth is a scorecard requires hard work, discipline, and consistency to manage, but it's worth it. Again, it goes back to that. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of effort on your part, and it's going to take some tweaking, and it's not going to come out perfect right out of the gate. There's going to be a few layers of cement or a few cuts we're going to have to take it to get it right, or you're still going to be missing a number, or maybe you've got too many numbers, or there's going to be some management involved in that, but it's all going to be worth it when you can look at a scorecard every week and know what decisions need to be made and where there's issues and what needs to happen and what needs to change or what's going great. The 7th truth, final truth, is one person must own it. And I don't mean passively manage, but I mean somebody's got to be the scorecard czar. Somebody's got to love it and obsess over it. That is the kind of personality that like, ooh, I love numbers and I love metrics and I love measurement. And they're going to sort of be responsible and drive everyone else for, have you turned in your numbers? And they're going to want to look at it every week and sort of dissect. And when they really own that and start reporting on it, you're definitely going to see that person holding the entire leadership team and the entire company accountable for these numbers and really pushing towards the proper use of it. So those are the 7 truths. The 6 fundamentals. Okay, this is how you have to fundamentally utilize this tool for it to work well. Okay, so the first one is you review it weekly with your leadership team. At a future episode, I will teach you the level 10 meeting that you will have with your leadership team weekly. And this is where you will review your scorecard, but it's not going to work if you don't review it weekly. Number 2, there's 5 to 15 numbers. Sometimes people want to overdo it and have 36 numbers on their leadership team scorecard. This is really just the high level, right? And remember, we're going to get more numbers on the departmental level. So when the marketing leader is in the leadership team meeting and they only have one measurable, that's how many leads come in the door every week, they're going to feel like, well, I got to know a lot more than that. And that's true. And they will have that on their departmental scorecard. So we want to keep the company scorecard high level, 5 to 15 numbers. The number 3 fundamental is someone is accountable for each measurable. This person is who drives it and who reports it. right? That doesn't mean they're responsible for 100% of the revenue coming in if they're perhaps the sales leader, but it does mean they're accountable for making sure that their team is living up to each one of their individual goals and measurables. And they're driving the accountability and driving that number to hit goal. And then they're responsible for reporting it. If no one's accountable, then this number is not going to be met, right? Or if two people are accountable, then no one's accountable because they're blaming each other. So make sure that that there's one person accountable for each number. And again, that doesn't mean they have to do all of the effort to hit that goal. It means they have to make sure that it's being hit by those accountable. Number 4 is there's a goal for each measurable. And again, even if it's just a gut guess at this point, we can't just start reporting numbers without knowing if it's on or off track compared to the goal. And so if the goal is number of units produced, and say you're unsure, I'm sure if you're producing units, you probably know how many you produce, but let's just say you're unsure at this point and you think, I think it's about an average of 10 a week. So let's put 10. And then if you find out you're at 6, guess what? You can say, oh, wow, we created these financial goals based on 10 a week. So what are we going to do to get to 10? Or do we need to revise our financial goals? Or do we need to change the way we produce units? All those things are what's going to give you. But you have to have a goal in order to say if it's on track or off track and to know if there's an issue. If you're just throwing a number on there, you don't know there's a problem yet, right? So you have to put something there. Number 5, if the goal's not hit, you drop it down. What I mean by drop it down is you drop it down to your issues list. And you'll understand more of that when we talk about the L10 meeting and the L10 agenda. But in that L10 meeting, there is a place for solving issues. And so if it's off track, you can't just keep saying off track, off track, off track every week. You're dropping it down. And if it's not an issue, you can simply say when you get to the issues list, you can say, we were off a week because of XYZ on vacation or whatever the reason, and move on from it. Like, it doesn't have to be an issue. But that every time it's dropped down, you're sort of saying, okay, well, this is the 6th time it's dropped down that we're not hitting goals. It's time for us to deal with it, right? And solve what the problem is. Because if you're not solving for not hitting the goal, then what is the point, right? Why are you setting goals? And why are you keeping track of all of this measurement and keeping track of these measurables if you're not going to do something about it when it's off track? And the 6th and final is that you always keep 13 weeks at a glance so that you're looking for those patterns and trends. I have some organizations that really like it quarterly. And what I ask that they do is they can create a new quarter when the quarter changes, but they're still keeping, like, even though they have only 1 week of this quarter, they're still keeping the 13 weeks at a glance, and they're still reviewing that. So you can start seeing trends of off track for multiple weeks in a row, and not resetting in the quarter, right? Because it's important to keep that those patterns and trends, okay? So that gives you a bunch of context for the scorecard and for the data component. 7 truths, 6 fundamentals, search your soul there and make sure that you truly believe those and that you're committed to running the scorecard in the way that the 6 fundamentals suggest, because it just won't serve you well unless you do that. So then creating your scorecard, this is how we do it when we're working with a client. So I've got the leadership team and I have them close their eyes, sit in quiet stillness, and picture themselves on an island. The entire leadership team goes on retreat to a beautiful tropical island where they're all sitting in lovely lounge chairs by the beach, watching the waves, enjoying themselves. And when the cabana boy or girl comes and brings them their umbrella drinks, they also bring them the weekly scorecard. And on this piece of paper gives them everything they need to know to understand if the company is doing okay. For an example, like, i.e., is the company hitting goals financially? Are all the operations goals being met? Are the marketing goals being met? The spending and the budget goals, employee and customer satisfaction numbers, whatever those numbers are, you're able to look at those and go, okay, every area of the company seems to be doing well. Let's stay on the island another week. Or we've got some issues. There's certainly some issues with sales. Are we all going back, or is the sales leader going back? So sit and imagine that. And now picture yourself thousands of miles from the company, wanting to make sure that everything's still operating efficiently and effectively, and everything's going well. What is it that you need to know? And now just brain dump every possible number you could think of that you would want to know. Okay. And once we compile that entire brainstorm from everyone in the organization, we're now going to take a pass at Keep, Kill, Combine, which is something else I've shared in a prior episode. So what we do is we look at each one and we sort of think, okay, is this a high level number? Does it meet the 5 to 15? Like, it's going to be a big one, right? This is definitely one of the big ones. Or no, this is more departmental. Or no, like, I like that information, but it's really not important to know if it's the company's running efficiently. So we keep it or kill it. If anybody wants to keep it, you keep it on the first pass. If there's any that you notice that are really the same thing, maybe just said slightly different, or that someone shared the same sort of measurable, combine them into one, if that makes sense. And then you take, like, what we see is about 30 measurables is typical on the first cut. So we're trying to get that down to 5 to 15. Less is more, less is better. So then we take another pass at that and Keep, Kill, Combine again into where you can really say, these are really the true 5 to 15. And remember that this is wet cement, right? That this is just your first cut at it. We're gonna go back and we're gonna use it for a while, and we're gonna go, oh, you know what we're missing? It's gonna become very clear. You're gonna be missing something, or you know what? We're getting way too many of these numbers. This isn't important on the island, or any of those kinds of things, or this is slightly off. I don't think it's this measurable. It's just slightly different. And so we're gonna get those numbers, and then the next step is going to be creating who's accountable and the goal for each of those. Again, if you have to dig in to find the goal or come up with a guess, just create a goal. So if it's a revenue goal, let's say it's the weekly revenue goal is $50,000 a week. And that's what we're going to put it at. And when we're at 48,000, we're off track. And so what are we going to do next week? It becomes an issue. And so what are we going to do to get, not only make up for the 2,000, but improve it next week, and things like that. And then who's accountable is who makes the most sense, right? Who's driving that goal? Whose department is it in? Where does it fall in, right? And so once we create that, you start using it. Week 1, by the following week after creating it, it should be populated with numbers for this week, and you should start using on track, off track in your weekly meeting. I'm going to share now a few examples of measurables. So maybe in sales and marketing, you have new leads, either percentage, numbers, or both, whatever. You have sales calls, sales presentations, proposals sent, closed business, expected revenue, actual revenue, year-to-date revenue, which is percentage to plan, right? So the way we do ours in my separate company, Fun Productions, we set a quarterly goal because we're very seasonal. So we can't have every week be the same because every week is vastly different depending on what quarter and what time of the year it is. And so we set a quarterly goal and then we do percentage to plan. So we're comparing that to the percentage, how far in the quarter we've accomplished. So if we're 25% of the quarter done and we're at 50% of the revenue, we're killing it. And if we're at 20% of the revenue, what are we going to do about it? Okay. So that's sort of a revenue question that we get. Let's see, cost of sales, page views, clicks, walk-ins, web conversions, any of those things are sales and marketing numbers. But remember, you're only going to need 1 to 2 from each department. Maybe, because revenue and budget might be sort of the finance department, sales might be number of calls and number of proposals and number of closed deals or something like that. Operation, run rates or units per day, per hour, errors, any customer problems or complaints. So we track that, we're tracking for operations, we're tracking things like staffed in-house versus getting outside staff. We're, on time deliveries, any customer complaints, any customer compliments that they're actually, raving about us. So those are kind of the numbers in our area, but defect rate, breakage or waste, delivery or any shipping, utilization rates, customer rating, overtime, billable hours, cost per unit, all of that, average hourly rate, all of those kind of things might fall into that operations. Finance, weekly revenue, cash balance, debt or cash on hand, AR, over 45 days or whatever, AP, any errors in input or reporting or billing, year-to-date profit or net profit, employee satisfaction, systems uptime or systems downtime, if you have machinery or you have IT, if there's time down, right, it creates expense. Employee sick days, late employees not hitting their number, open positions, payroll. We have payroll percentage to income. So all kinds of different ideas just to stir the pot and get your juices flowing. I'm going to pull up our scorecard. So we have weekly percent to goal and budget percent to goal, right? So we're hoping that our budget is below goal, equal or less than, 25% of the goal for the quarter, at 20. Yeah, I've just made that confusing. So let's say our budget is $460,000 for the quarter. We're going to break that out weekly and we want our budget number to be equal to or less than that goal, and our revenue number to be equal to or higher than our revenue goal, right? Percentage of payroll to revenue, inbound leads, total events, average dollar gross of per event, client complaints, client compliments, any refunds, success audits, so that our management goes and does success audits of events. And so what's the percentage? We want 50% of the events that we do to have a manager go out and success audit it. Number of issues added to a repair log, and staffing internal percentage. So there's our leadership team scorecard. Now, if we were to go to our sales team scorecard, we have number of leads. We have number of contracts signed, number of proposals sent, average size, general information sent, inbound phone calls, inbound direct email leads, website forms filled out, number of projects lost proposals due to price, lost proposals due to not having what the client needs, timeliness of paperwork, accuracy of paperwork, and client complaints or compliments. Okay, so that's our account management / sales team, right? They need to know a lot more information. So if we're losing more events than we're getting, they're doing a lot of extra work for nothing. And we can then dig in and say, okay, why are we losing them? Due to price, or us not having the item that they need, or is it something else altogether? We can sort of, so the sales team in their meetings, they can sort of solve, and they can bring issues from the sales team to the leadership team. The sales leader can bring those issues and say, okay, we're struggling with the amount of proposals we're losing. I think we need to lower our prices. I think we need to bring in some X number of new services, whatever, right? We can start looking at, why are we losing proposals? Things like that. So those are some examples for you. That is what 100% strong looks like in the data component, is when you have scorecards for the leadership team and every department, and every employee in the entire organization has at least one measurable that they're accountable for, and that you're checking this scorecard weekly, and that you're seeing the patterns and trends and solving for issues within it and making your decisions from this scorecard. And that is what 100% strong looks like in the data component. So again, reach out to me with any questions, Dawn at Abbott, ABBOTT, coach.com, or www.abbottcoach.com. I'm happy to answer questions, help you, send you a scorecard template to get you started. And my hope is for you to get strong in the data component, because it's a game changer. Have a great week. Thanks for listening. See you next week.